The morning sun was just starting to peek through the trees as Detective Lisa Rodriguez drove down the quiet highway. She had been working undercover for the past 3 months on a major case involving drug trafficking that crossed state lines. Today was supposed to be her day off, but she decided to drive to the next town to meet with a key witness who had important information. Lisa was driving her personal car, a simple blue sedan that didn't stand out. She always preferred to keep things low-key when working on sensitive cases. The radio was playing soft music, and she was thinking about how this case could make a real difference in stopping the flow of drugs through small towns. As she drove through Millfield, a small town she had never visited before, she noticed how peaceful everything looked. There were old oak trees lining the streets, small shops with hand-painted signs, and people walking their dogs. It seemed like the kind of place where everyone knew each other. But then she saw the flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. Lisa looked down at her speedometer. She was going exactly the speed limit. She checked her seatbelt and made sure everything was in order. Maybe the officer just needed to get around her for an emergency call. She pulled over to the side of the road and waited. The police car pulled up behind her and stopped. Lisa could see the officer getting out of his car in her side mirror. He was a big man, probably in his 40s, with a stern expression on his face. His uniform looked crisp and official, and she could see the captain's bars on his collar. The officer walked up to her window with heavy steps. His hand was resting on his belt near his weapon, which made Lisa a bit nervous. She had been in law enforcement long enough to know that this wasn't normal for a routine traffic stop. Lisa rolled down her window and gave him a polite smile. "Good morning, officer. Was I doing something wrong?" The captain looked down at her, with cold eyes. "License and registration, now." His tone was harsh and unfriendly, which surprised Lisa. She had dealt with many police officers in her career, and most were professional, even during traffic stops. This felt different. "Of course," Lisa said calmly. She reached for her purse slowly, making sure to keep her movements visible. "Can you tell me why you stopped me?" "Just get your documents," the captain snapped, "and keep your hands where I can see them." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Something was definitely wrong here. She carefully pulled out her wallet and found her driver's license. Then she reached for the glove compartment to get her registration. "Stop right there," the captain shouted. "Step out of the vehicle immediately." Lisa's heart started beating faster. "Sir, I'm just getting my registration like you asked." "I said get out of the car now." His voice was getting louder and more aggressive. Lisa took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. She had been trained for situations like this. "Officer, I'm a federal agent. I'm just trying to comply with your request." The captain laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "Sure you are, lady. And I'm the president. Get out of that car right now or I'll drag you out myself." Lisa slowly opened her car door and stepped out. She kept her hands visible at all times and moved very carefully. "Sir, I have my federal credentials in my jacket. May I show them to you?" "Turn around and put your hands on the car," the captain ordered, ignoring what she had just said. "Officer, please listen to me. I'm Agent Lisa Rodriguez with the Drug Enforcement Administration. I have my badge and identification right here." She started to reach for her jacket pocket. "Don't move," the captain yelled, grabbing her arm roughly. "You're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer." Lisa couldn't believe what was happening. "Sir, you haven't even looked at my credentials. How can you arrest me for impersonation when you won't let me show you my badge?" But the captain wasn't listening. He spun her around and pushed her against her car. The metal was hot from the sun and it burned against her cheek. "You people think you can just flash some fake badge and get away with anything," the captain said as he grabbed her wrists. "Well, not in my town." The way he said, "you people," made Lisa's stomach turn. She realized this wasn't just about her being stopped for some minor traffic violation. This was about something much worse. "Sir, please just look at my identification," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I can give you the number to my field office. They'll confirm who I am." "Save it for the judge," the captain said as he pulled out his handcuffs. "You picked the wrong town to run your scam in." Lisa felt the cold metal of the handcuffs closing around her wrists. She had been handcuffed before during training exercises, but this felt completely different. This felt like a violation of everything she stood for as a law enforcement officer. "You're making a huge mistake," Lisa said quietly. "I'm working on a federal case and my supervisor is expecting to hear from me." The captain just laughed again. "Federal case, right. What's next? You gonna tell me you work for the CIA too?" Lisa noticed that people were starting to gather on the sidewalk. A few were holding up their phones, recording everything that was happening. She felt embarrassed and angry at the same time. Here she was, a decorated federal agent with 15 years of experience, being treated like a common criminal. "Officer, what's your name?" Lisa asked. "I want to make sure I have it right when I file my report." "Captain Danny Peterson," he said proudly, "and you can file all the reports you want from your jail cell." Captain Peterson opened the back door of his police car. The inside smelled like disinfectant and fear. Lisa had put plenty of real criminals in the back of police cars during her career. She never imagined she would be on the other side of this experience. "Watch your head," Peterson said, but not because he cared about her safety. He pushed her down into the seat harder than necessary. As Lisa sat in the back of the patrol car, she looked out at the small crowd that had gathered. Some people looked concerned, others just seemed curious about the excitement. She wondered if any of them would speak up if they thought something was wrong. Peterson got into the front seat and started typing on his computer. Lisa could see him entering information about her arrest. She knew that once this went into the system, it would be much harder to fix. "Captain Peterson," Lisa said through the metal screen that separated them, "I'm asking you one more time to please look at my federal credentials. They're in my jacket pocket. This is all a big misunderstanding." Peterson turned around and looked at her through the screen. His eyes were full of anger and something else that made Lisa feel sick to her stomach. "Listen here," he said slowly. "I've been a police officer in this town for 22 years. I know a real federal agent when I see one, and you ain't it. Real agents don't drive around and beat up cars wearing casual clothes. Real agents have respect for local law enforcement." Lisa wanted to explain that she was undercover, that she was dressed to blend in, that not all federal agents drove government cars with flashing lights. But she could tell that Peterson had already made up his mind about who he thought she was. "What real agents definitely don't do," Peterson continued, "is try to intimidate hardworking police officers with fake badges and made-up stories." The radio in Peterson's car crackled to life. "Unit 12, what's your status?" Peterson picked up the radio. "Unit 12 here. I've got a suspect in custody for impersonating a federal officer. Bringing her in now." "Copy that, Unit 12. Need any backup?" "Negative, just one suspect. Should be a quick booking." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to think. She knew that once they got to the police station, things could get much more complicated. She needed to find a way to prove who she was before this went too far. "Captain Peterson," she said, trying one more time, "I understand you're just doing your job, but I'm asking you, officer to officer, to please just make one phone call. Call the DEA field office in the state capitol. Ask for Supervisor Johnson. He'll tell you exactly who I am." Peterson was already driving toward the police station. "Nice try, but I wasn't born yesterday. You probably have some friend ready to answer the phone and pretend to be your supervisor." Lisa felt a wave of frustration wash over her. How could someone be so stubborn about something so easy to verify? All it would take was one phone call to the right people, and this whole mess could be cleared up in minutes. As they drove through the town, Lisa looked out the window at the houses and shops. This seemed like a nice place, the kind of community where people cared about each other. She wondered how the residents would feel if they knew their police captain was arresting federal agents without even checking their credentials. The police station was a small brick building on Main Street. It looked like it had been built sometime in the 1960s and hadn't been updated much since then. There were only 3 police cars in the parking lot, which told Lisa that this was a pretty small department. Peterson parked the car and turned off the engine. "End of the line," he said. "Hope you enjoyed your little ride." As Peterson got out to open her door, Lisa took a deep breath. She knew the next few hours were going to be challenging, But she also knew the truth would come out eventually. She just hoped it would come out before too much damage was done. Peterson opened the back door and helped her out of the car, though his version of helping was more like pulling. Lisa stood up straight and looked him in the eye. "Captain Peterson," she said. The inside of the Millfield police station felt like stepping back in time. The walls were painted a dull green color that had probably been popular 30 years ago. There were wanted posters hanging on a bulletin board, and the whole place had that musty smell of old coffee and cleaning supplies. Behind the reception desk sat a woman who looked like she had been working there since the building opened. She had gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. When she saw Captain Peterson walking in, with Lisa in handcuffs, she barely looked up from her paperwork. "Another one, Danny?" the receptionist asked without much interest. "Yeah, Helen, this one's special, though. Claims to be a federal agent." Peterson said it like it was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard. Helen finally looked up and studied Lisa from head to toe. Federal agent? Her? In those clothes? Lisa was wearing jeans and a plain jacket, the kind of outfit that helped her blend in during undercover work. But she could see that to these people, her casual appearance was just more evidence that she was lying. "That's exactly what I thought," Peterson said, leading Lisa toward a hallway lined with doors. "Come on, let's get you processed." As they walked down the hallway, Lisa tried to stay calm and think about her options. She had been in difficult situations before during her career, but this was different. Usually when she was in trouble, it was because of dangerous criminals, not because of other police officers who refused to listen. Peterson opened a door to a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs. The walls were bare, except for a mirror that Lisa knew was probably a one-way window. This was clearly the interrogation room. "Have a seat," Peterson said, pointing to one of the chairs. "Captain Peterson, before we go any further, I need to ask you to contact my supervisor. This is getting out of hand." Peterson sat down across from her and pulled out a notepad. "The only thing that's out of hand is you thinking you can fool me with this act. Now, what's your real name?" "My real name is Lisa Rodriguez, and I'm a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration. My badge number is 3847, and I've been with the agency for 15 years. Peterson wrote something down on his notepad, but Lisa could tell he wasn't taking her seriously. "Okay, Agent Rodriguez. And what brings you to our little town? Running drugs? Meeting with dealers?" The accusation hit Lisa like a slap in the face. Here she was, someone who had dedicated her entire adult life to fighting drug crime, being accused of the very thing she worked to stop. "I'm here on official business," Lisa said firmly. "I was driving to meet with a witness in connection with a federal drug trafficking investigation." "Right," Peterson said, not believing a word. "And I suppose this witness can verify your story? If you would just let me make a phone call, I can prove everything I'm telling you." Peterson leaned back in his chair and studied her face. "You know what I think? I think you're part of some kind of con game. Maybe you and your friends target small towns, flash fake badges, and try to intimidate local police. Well, it's not going to work here." Lisa felt her patience wearing thin, but she knew she had to stay professional. Getting angry would only make things worse. "Captain, I understand why you might be suspicious, but please just look at my credentials. They're right here in my jacket pocket. You can examine them, call the numbers on them, verify everything." Peterson stood up from his chair. "I've seen fake IDs before. They're getting pretty good these days. But here's what you probably don't know about me. I've been doing this job for over 2 decades. I can spot a fake from a mile away." "Then look at mine," Lisa said. "If it's fake, you'll know immediately. If it's real, then you'll know you made a mistake." For a moment, Peterson seemed to consider it, but then he shook his head. "Nice try, but I'm not falling for it. You're going to sit right here while I call the district attorney and let them know we've got someone impersonating a federal officer." Peterson walked toward the door, then turned back to face Lisa. "You picked the wrong town and the wrong police captain to mess with. We don't play games here in Millfield." After Peterson left, Lisa sat alone in the interrogation room. She looked around at the blank walls and tried to figure out her next move. She knew that her supervisor, Agent Johnson, would start to worry if she didn't check in soon. They had scheduled a call for later that afternoon. The problem was that even if Johnson tried to find her, it might take time. She was supposed to be meeting with a witness in the next town over, so if she went missing, they might start looking in the wrong place. Lisa tested the handcuffs. They were tight but not cutting off her circulation. She had been trained in how to escape from restraints if necessary, but she didn't want to do anything that would make the situation worse. She was still hoping this could all be resolved peacefully. About 20 minutes later, Peterson came back into the room. He was carrying a clipboard with several forms on it. "Okay, let's make this official," he said, sitting back down. "Full name: Lisa Maria Rodriguez. Date of birth." Lisa gave him the information, knowing that it would be easy enough for him to verify if he wanted to, but she could tell he was just going through the motions of booking her without any intention of actually checking her background. Address. Lisa hesitated for a moment. She could give him her home address, but she was in the middle of an undercover operation. Giving out personal information could compromise her safety and the safety of others involved in the case. "I need to speak with my supervisor before I can give you that information," she said. Peterson's eyes flashed with anger. "You'll give me the information I ask for, or things are going to get a lot worse for you." "Captain, I'm not trying to be difficult, but if I'm working undercover, there are security protocols I have to follow. Surely you can understand that." "What I understand is that you're stalling and making up excuses." Peterson stood up and started pacing around the small room. Real federal agents cooperate with local law enforcement. They don't sit in interrogation rooms making demands and refusing to answer questions. Lisa watched him pace and tried to read his body language. He was getting more agitated, not less. This wasn't going in the right direction. "Captain Peterson, please just make one phone call. Call the DEA field office and ask for Supervisor Mark Johnson. He'll confirm everything I've told you. It will take 5 minutes, and then this whole misunderstanding can be cleared up." Peterson stopped pacing and leaned over the table, getting close to Lisa's face. "You know what I think? I think you've been watching too many cop shows on TV. You think you know how this works, but you don't." His breath smelled like coffee and cigarettes, and Lisa had to fight the urge to pull back. She needed to stay strong and professional, even in the face of his intimidation tactics. "I think," Peterson continued, "that you're probably involved in drugs somehow. Maybe not as a dealer, but maybe as a user. And when you got pulled over, you panicked and decided to try this federal agent story." "That's not true, and you know it," Lisa said quietly. "If you really think I'm on drugs, then test me. Take a blood sample. Check my background. Do whatever you need to do to verify who I am." Peterson straightened up and crossed his arms. "Oh, we'll be doing all of that. But first you're going to sit in a cell while I finish the paperwork." He walked to the door and called out, "Helen, need you to process this prisoner." The gray-haired receptionist appeared in the doorway, looking annoyed at being bothered. "What do you need me to do?" "Standard booking. Impersonating a federal officer, possibly drug-related charges pending investigation." Helen looked at Lisa again, and her expression was full of judgment and disgust. "Federal officer? Really? What's next, gonna tell us she's with the Secret Service too?" "That's what I said," Peterson agreed. "Some people will say anything to try to get out of trouble." Lisa felt anger boiling up inside her, but she forced herself to stay calm. Getting upset would only confirm what they already thought about her. "Ma'am," Lisa said to Helen, "I understand. This looks unusual, but I really am a federal agent. My credentials are in my jacket pocket. Would you please just look at them?" Helen rolled her eyes. "Honey, I've been working in this police station for 28 years. I've seen every scam and every story you can imagine. You think you're the first person to try the fake federal agent routine?" "I'm not trying any routine," Lisa said. "I'm telling you the truth." "Sure you are, sweetheart. Come on, let's get you fingerprinted." Helen led Lisa to another room where there was an ink pad and fingerprint cards. The process felt humiliating, but Lisa cooperated fully. She knew her fingerprints would prove who she was once they ran them through the system. "These prints are going to come back to Lisa Rodriguez, DEA agent," she told Helen as her fingers were rolled across the ink pad. "We'll see about that," Helen said. "We'll see what they come back to." After the fingerprinting, Helen took Lisa to a small holding cell at the back of the station. It was barely big enough for the narrow cot and tiny sink that were bolted to the walls. The bars were painted white, but the paint was chipping off in several places. "In you go," Helen said, unlocking the cell door. "Captain Peterson will be back to talk to you later." As the cell door clanged shut, Lisa sat down on the cot and tried to process what was happening to her. She had arrested dozens of people. Lisa had been sitting in the holding cell for almost 3 hours when she heard new voices at the front of the police station. Through the small window near the ceiling, she could see that the afternoon sun was getting lower. Her meeting with the witness had already been missed, and she knew her supervisor would be starting to worry. The voices got louder, and she could hear what sounded like an argument between Captain Peterson and someone else she didn't recognize. "Danny, you can't just hold someone without letting them make a phone call," the other voice was saying. "That's basic procedure." "Don't tell me how to do my job, Tom," Peterson replied angrily. "I've been handling arrests since before you were out of training. But this woman has been asking for hours to make a call. Even if she's lying about being a federal agent, she still has rights." Lisa's heart jumped. Finally, someone was speaking, up for her. She moved closer to the cell bars, trying to hear more of the conversation. "She'll get her call when I'm good and ready," Peterson said. "Right now I'm waiting for her fingerprints to come back. Once we know who she really is, then we can move forward." "How long ago did you submit the prints?" There was a pause before Peterson answered. "A couple hours ago." "Danny, it doesn't take that long to run prints through the system. What's really going on here?" Lisa could hear Peterson's voice getting more defensive. "What's going on is that I've got someone in my jail who's trying to impersonate a federal officer. That's a serious crime, Tom." "Then let her make the call she's been asking for. If she's really lying, the call will prove it. If she's telling the truth." The voice trailed off. "She's not telling the truth," Peterson said firmly. "I know a real federal agent when I see one." Lisa decided this might be her chance. "Excuse me," she called out loudly. "Officer, could I speak with you, please?" She heard footsteps coming toward the holding area, and a moment later, a younger police officer appeared at her cell. He looked to be in his 30s, with short brown hair and a much kinder expression than Peterson had shown her. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Tom Bradley. Captain Peterson tells me you've been asking to make a phone call." "Yes, sir. I have been. I've been asking for hours. I need to contact my supervisor at the Drug Enforcement Administration." Officer Bradley looked uncomfortable. He glanced back toward the front of the station, then looked at Lisa again. "Ma'am, I have to ask. Do you really work for the DEA?" Lisa could hear the doubt in his voice, but at least he was asking the question instead of just assuming she was lying. "Yes, I do. I'm Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez. I've been with the agency for 15 years. I was driving through town on my way to meet with a witness when Captain Peterson pulled me over." "And you have identification to prove this?" "Yes, I do. My badge and credentials are in my jacket pocket. I've been trying to show them to Captain Peterson since this started, but he won't look at them." Bradley frowned. "He won't look at your ID?" "No, sir. He decided I was lying before he even gave me a chance to prove who I am." Bradley was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Can I see this identification?" Lisa felt a wave of relief. "Yes, absolutely. It's in my inside jacket pocket." Bradley looked around, then reached through the bars and carefully removed Lisa's federal credentials from her jacket. He studied them closely, examining the badge, the photo ID, and the official seals. His expression changed as he looked at the documents. "These look real to me." "They are real," Lisa said. "Officer Bradley, I need you to call the DEA field office in the state capitol. Ask for Supervisor Mark Johnson. He'll confirm everything I've told you." Bradley was still examining the credentials when Captain Peterson's voice boomed from behind him. "What the hell are you doing, Tom?" Bradley turned around, still holding Lisa's badge and ID. "Danny, I think you need to look at these." Peterson stomped over and snatched the credentials out of Bradley's hands. "I told you these are fake. Anyone can get fake badges made these days." But as Peterson looked at the documents, his expression started to change. The badge was heavy and had the detailed engraving that was hard to fake. The ID card had multiple security features, including holograms and special printing. "These are fake," Peterson said again, but his voice had less confidence than before. "Danny," Bradley said quietly, "what if they're not? What if she really is a federal agent?" Peterson's face was getting red. "She's not a federal agent. Look at her. Does she look like a federal agent to you?" "What's a federal agent supposed to look like?" Bradley asked. The question seemed to catch Peterson off guard. He looked at Lisa, then at the credentials, then back at Bradley. "They wear suits," Peterson said weakly. "They drive government cars. They don't just show up in small towns without any advance notice. Unless they're working undercover," Bradley pointed out. Lisa could see the doubt creeping into Peterson's face, but she could also see his stubborn pride fighting against it. He didn't want to admit that he might have made a mistake. "Officer Bradley," Lisa said calmly, "I understand Captain Peterson's concerns. That's why I keep asking to make a phone call. One call to my supervisor will clear this up immediately." Bradley nodded. "That makes sense to me. Danny, what's the harm in letting her make the call? If she's lying, we'll know in 5 minutes." Peterson was quiet for a long moment. Lisa could practically see the wheels turning in his head. He was trapped between his certainty that she was lying and the growing evidence that maybe, just maybe, she was telling the truth. "Fine," Peterson said finally. "One phone call, but I'm listening to every word." Bradley brought a phone to Lisa's cell and plugged it into a jack on the wall. "What's the number?" Lisa gave him the direct number to Supervisor Johnson's office. Her hands were shaking slightly as she dialed. She had never been so happy to make a phone call in her entire life. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Lisa started to panic that Johnson might not be in his office. "Johnson here. Mark, it's Lisa. Thank God you're there." "Lisa? Where are you? You were supposed to check in an hour ago. I've been worried sick." Lisa could hear the concern in her supervisor's voice, and she felt tears starting to form in her eyes. Finally, someone who knew who she really was. "Mark, I'm in some trouble. I'm in the Millfield police station. I've been arrested." "Arrested? For what?" "The local police captain says I'm impersonating a federal officer. He won't believe that I'm really DEA." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Put him on the phone. Now." Lisa handed the phone to Captain Peterson, who had been listening to every word. "He wants to talk to you." Peterson took the phone reluctantly. "This is Captain Peterson." Lisa couldn't hear what Johnson was saying, but she could see Peterson's face getting pale. Johnson was known for his calm demeanor, but when his agents were threatened, he could be fierce. "Yes, sir," Peterson said into the phone. "I understand, but..." He was quiet for a moment, listening. "Well, she didn't look like..." Another pause. "I was just trying to..." Peterson's voice was getting smaller. After a few more minutes of one-sided conversation, Peterson held the phone out to Lisa. His hand was actually shaking a little. "He wants to talk to you again." Lisa took the phone. "Mark? Are you hurt? Did they mistreat you?" "I'm okay, frustrated and angry, but not hurt." "Good. Now listen carefully. I'm calling the chief of police for that department right now. You should be released within the hour. Are you able to continue with your assignment, or do you need backup?" Lisa looked at Captain Peterson, who was standing there looking like he had seen a ghost. Officer Bradley was watching the whole scene with wide eyes.
"I think I can handle it from here, Mark, but I might be delayed getting to the witness meeting." "Don't worry about that. I already contacted the witness and rescheduled for tomorrow. The important thing is getting you out of there safely." "Thanks."
"Mark, I owe you one." "You don't owe me anything. This is what we do for each other. I'll call you back in an hour to make sure everything's sorted out." Lisa hung up the phone and looked at Captain Peterson. The arrogant, aggressive man who had arrested her a few hours earlier was gone. In his place stood someone who looked like he was about to be sick. "Captain Peterson," Lisa said quietly, "I think we need to talk." Peterson nodded slowly, unable to meet her eyes. Officer Bradley, could you unlock the cell, please? Bradley quickly found the keys and opened the cell door. Lisa stepped out and stretched her legs, which were stiff from sitting on the narrow cot. Agent Rodriguez, Peterson began, his voice barely above a whisper. I think there might have been a misunderstanding. Lisa looked at him for a long moment. Part of her wanted to be angry, to yell at him for the hours of humiliation and frustration he had put her through, but she could see that he was already suffering enough. Captain Peterson, the only misunderstanding here is that you refused to look at my credentials when I first showed them to you. If you had taken 30 seconds to examine my badge and ID, none of this would have happened. Peterson nodded miserably. You're right, I should have looked. He trailed off. You just what? Peterson was quiet for a moment, then he looked up at her. I guess I made some assumptions about what a federal agent should look like. The admission hung in the air between them. Lisa knew there was more to it than that, but at least he was starting to acknowledge his mistake. Officer Bradley cleared his throat. Chief Robert Williams was not a man who lost his temper easily. In his 30 years of law enforcement, he had learned that staying calm usually got better results than shouting. But as he drove toward the Millfield police station, his hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. The phone call from DEA Supervisor Johnson had been one of the most embarrassing conversations of his entire career. One of his officers had arrested a federal agent, refused to look at her credentials, and kept her in jail for hours without allowing her to make a phone call. It was every police chief's worst nightmare. Chief Williams pulled into the parking lot of the station and sat in his car for a moment, trying to figure out how to handle this situation. He had known Captain Peterson for 15 years. Peterson was a good officer in many ways, but he had always had a problem with authority and a tendency to make snap judgments about people. This time, those tendencies might have destroyed both their careers. Williams got out of his car and walked into the station. Helen looked up from her desk with a nervous expression. Chief, they're waiting for you in the conference room. How long have they been here? About 10 minutes. Captain Peterson looks like he's about to throw up. Williams nodded and walked down the hallway toward the conference room. Through the glass door, he could see Peterson sitting at the table looking miserable. Across from him sat a woman in casual clothes who had to be Agent Rodriguez. Williams took a deep breath and opened the door. Agent Rodriguez, I'm Chief Williams. I owe you a sincere apology for what happened here today. Lisa stood up and shook his hand. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. Williams looked at Peterson, who couldn't seem to make eye contact with anyone. Captain Peterson, would you mind explaining to me exactly what happened today? Peterson cleared his throat nervously. Chief, I pulled Agent Rodriguez over for what I thought was a routine traffic stop. When she claimed to be a federal agent, I didn't believe her. Why not? Peterson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Well, she was dressed casually, driving a personal vehicle. She didn't look like what I expected a federal agent to look like. Did you examine her credentials? Peterson's face turned red. No, sir, I did not. Why not? I thought they were fake. Chief Williams felt his jaw tighten. Captain, help me understand this. You thought her credentials were fake, but you didn't bother to actually look at them to confirm your suspicions. That's correct, sir. Williams turned to Lisa. Agent Rodriguez, when did you first try to show Captain Peterson your identification? Immediately after he pulled me over. I told him I was a federal agent and offered to show him my badge and credentials. He refused to look at them. And how many times did you ask to make a phone call? Dozens of times over the course of 3 hours. Williams felt a headache starting behind his eyes. This was even worse than Supervisor Johnson had described. Captain Peterson, Williams said, his voice getting harder, explain to me why you refused to allow Agent Rodriguez to make a phone call. I was waiting for her fingerprints to come back from the system. How long ago did you submit those fingerprints? Peterson hesitated. Actually, sir, I didn't submit them yet. The room went completely silent. Williams stared at Peterson in disbelief. You didn't submit them? Captain, You've been holding a federal agent in jail for 3 hours, and you didn't even bother to run her fingerprints? I was planning to do it, but what? Williams was fighting to keep his voice level. But you were too busy enjoying the power trip? Lisa watched the exchange between the two men and could see that Chief Williams was genuinely angry about what had happened. That was a relief. She had been worried that the entire department might be backing Peterson's actions. Chief Williams, Lisa said, I understand that mistakes happen, but I have to ask, is this kind of behavior normal for Captain Peterson? Williams looked at her, then at Peterson. Agent Rodriguez, I want to assure you that this is not normal behavior for any officer in my department. What happened today was completely unacceptable. Peterson finally found his voice. Chief, I was just trying to do my job. We've had problems with people impersonating police officers in nearby towns. I was being cautious. Being cautious means examining someone's credentials when they offer to show them to you, Williams replied sharply. Being cautious means making a phone call to verify someone's identity. What you did today wasn't cautious, it was reckless. Lisa could see that Peterson was starting to realize just how much trouble he was in. His career, his reputation, and possibly his freedom were all on the line. Captain Peterson, she said, can I ask you something directly? Peterson nodded reluctantly. If I had been a white man in a business suit, would you have treated me the same way? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Peterson opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Chief Williams was watching him carefully. I don't know, Peterson said finally. I think you do know, Lisa said gently. I think if a white man in a suit had told you he was a federal agent, you would have looked at his credentials immediately. You would have treated him with professional courtesy. You wouldn't have assumed he was lying. Peterson was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. You're probably right. It was the first completely honest thing Peterson had said since the whole situation began. Chief Williams looked surprised that Peterson had admitted it so directly. Captain, Williams said, do you understand the seriousness of what you just acknowledged? Peterson nodded miserably. Yes, sir, I do. Williams turned to Lisa. Agent Rodriguez, what would you like to see happen here? I know this situation has caused you significant problems with your work. Lisa had been thinking about that question for the past hour. She was angry, frustrated, and embarrassed by what had happened. But she was also a law enforcement officer who understood that good cops sometimes made bad mistakes. Chief Williams, I think there are a few things that need to happen. First, I need a written apology from Captain Peterson and from your department. Second, I need assurance that this kind of thing won't happen to other people in the future. What kind of assurance? Training, bias training, civil rights training, proper procedure training, not just for Captain Peterson, but for your entire department. Williams nodded. That's reasonable. What else? I think Captain Peterson needs to understand the impact of his actions. This wasn't just about me. What if I had been an ordinary citizen who couldn't prove their innocence as easily as I could? What if I had been someone who didn't speak English well, or someone who was scared of police? Peterson looked up at her. I never thought about that. That's exactly the problem, Lisa said. You didn't think. You made assumptions based on how I looked, and you refused to consider that you might be wrong. Chief Williams was taking notes on everything Lisa was saying. Agent Rodriguez, are you planning to file a formal complaint about this incident? Lisa sighed. I don't know yet. I need to talk to my supervisor and think about it. But I will say this. If I hear about Captain Peterson treating anyone else this way, I won't hesitate to take formal action. Peterson looked like he was about to cry. Agent Rodriguez, is there anything I can do to make this right? You can learn from it, Lisa said simply. You can make sure it never happens again, to anyone. At that moment, Williams' radio crackled to life. Chief, you have a call from the mayor. Says it's urgent. Williams closed his eyes. Helen, take a message. Tell the mayor I'll call him back in 30 minutes. He says he already knows about the situation with the federal agent. Says the story is on social media. Lisa and Williams looked at each other with alarm. What social media? Williams asked. Apparently someone recorded Captain Peterson arresting Agent Rodriguez. The video's going viral. Peterson's face went completely white. Oh no, this can't be happening. Williams grabbed his radio. Helen, bring me your computer. I need to see this video right now. A few minutes later, Helen brought in a laptop and set it on the conference room table. Williams typed in a search and found the video immediately. It had been posted on multiple platforms and already had thousands of views. The video showed Peterson forcing Lisa out of her car, refusing to listen to her explanations and putting her in handcuffs while she calmly tried to show him her credentials. The person recording had caught audio of Peterson saying, "You people," and dismissing her claims without even looking at her badge. This is a disaster, Williams said quietly. Captain Peterson, you realize this video makes you and our entire department look terrible. Peterson was staring at the laptop screen in horror. I didn't know anyone was recording. In this day and age, someone is always recording, Lisa said. That's why it's so important to treat every person with dignity and respect. Williams's phone started ringing. That's probably the mayor again, and it won't be the last call we get about this. He answered the phone. Chief Williams. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm aware of the situation. Yes, I've seen the video. No, sir, we're handling it internally. I understand your concerns. The conversation went on for several more minutes, with Williams mostly listening and saying, yes, sir, a lot. When he finally hung up, he looked exhausted. The mayor wants a full report on his desk by tomorrow morning. He's also, 3 weeks after the incident, Lisa Rodriguez sat in her office at the DEA field office reviewing paperwork from her latest case. The drug trafficking investigation that had brought her to Millfield in the first place had been successfully completed, with several major arrests made thanks to the witness testimony she had eventually been able to collect. But the events of that day in Millfield had taken on a life of their own. The video of her arrest had been viewed over 2 million times across various social media platforms. News outlets had picked up the story, and it had become a national conversation about police bias and the treatment of minorities in law enforcement. Lisa had given several interviews, always emphasizing that she believed most police officers were good people who were trying to do their jobs properly. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Agent Rodriguez, this is Chief Williams from Millfield. Do you have a minute to talk? Of course, Chief. How are things going down there? Williams sighed. It's been a challenging few weeks, I won't lie. But I wanted to give you an update on what we've been doing in response to what happened. Lisa had been curious about this. After the video went viral, there had been calls for Captain Peterson to be fired, for Chief Williams to resign, and for the entire Millfield Police Department to be investigated by federal authorities. What kind of changes are you making? Lisa asked. Well, first off, Captain Peterson has been suspended pending a full internal investigation. We're also bringing in outside consultants to review all of our policies and procedures. That sounds like a good start. We've also enrolled every officer in our department in bias training and de-escalation training, and we've implemented a new policy requiring officers to examine any identification that someone presents to them, regardless of what they think about the person's appearance. Lisa was impressed. Many police departments would have tried to minimize the incident or just waited for it to blow over. It sounded like Chief Williams was taking real action. How are your officers responding to the changes? Most of them are supportive. They understand that what Peterson did made all of us look bad. But I'll be honest, a few of the older officers are resistant. They think we're overreacting. Lisa wasn't surprised. Change was always difficult, especially in organizations with strong traditions like police departments. What about Captain Peterson himself? How is he handling all of this? Williams was quiet for a moment. That's actually part of why I'm calling you. Peterson has asked if he could speak with you directly. He wants to apologize in person and discuss some ideas he has for preventing this kind of thing in the future. Lisa was intrigued. She had wondered what Peterson was thinking about all of this, especially after his initial show of remorse in Chief Williams's office. What kind of ideas does he have? I'd rather let him tell you himself. But I will say that he's been doing a lot of soul-searching over the past few weeks. The man I'm talking to now is very different from the man who arrested you. Lisa thought about it. She didn't owe Peterson anything. and she certainly didn't need to make his life easier. But she was curious about what he had to say. "Okay," she said finally. "I'm willing to listen." 2 days later, Lisa found herself back in Millfield, sitting in a coffee shop on Main Street. She had suggested meeting in a public place rather than at the police station, partly for her own comfort and partly because she knew Peterson probably wasn't popular around the station these days. Peterson walked in right on time, looking nothing like the arrogant, aggressive officer who had arrested her 3 weeks earlier. He looked tired and older, like someone who had been carrying a heavy burden. "Agent Rodriguez, thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I know you didn't have to do this." Lisa gestured for him to sit down. "I'm curious to hear what you have to say." Peterson sat down and ordered a cup of coffee with shaking hands. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened that day. Not just about what I did to you, but about why I did it." "And what conclusion did you come to?" "I think I was scared," Peterson said quietly. "Scared that things were changing and I didn't understand how to adapt. Scared that maybe I wasn't as good at my job as I thought I was." Lisa studied his face. "What were you scared of specifically?" Peterson was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. "I guess I was scared that law enforcement was becoming more diverse, more educated, more sophisticated. And instead of trying to learn and grow with those changes, I decided to dig in and resist them." It was a surprisingly honest answer. Lisa had expected excuses or explanations, not this kind of self-reflection. "When I saw you that day," Peterson continued, "you represented everything that made me feel insecure about my own abilities. You were smart, professional, confident. You had federal credentials and years of experience with complex cases. And instead of respecting that, I felt threatened by it." Lisa sipped her coffee and considered his words. "So you decided to tear me down instead of acknowledging what I had accomplished." "Exactly. And that was wrong on every level. It was wrong professionally, it was wrong morally, and it was wrong personally." Peterson pulled out a folder and placed it on the table between them. "I've been working on something and I wanted to show it to you." Lisa opened the folder and found a detailed proposal for a new training program focused on recognizing and overcoming unconscious bias in law enforcement. The proposal included curriculum suggestions, training schedules, and even ideas for bringing in outside speakers. "This is pretty comprehensive," Lisa said, flipping through the pages. "Did you write all of this yourself?" "I had some help from a consultant who specializes in this kind of training. But yes, most of it came from me. I've been reading everything I can find about bias, discrimination, and community policing." Lisa was impressed despite herself. This wasn't just a superficial attempt to make amends. It was a serious effort to understand and address the underlying issues that had led to their confrontation. "What do you plan to do with this?" "I want to present it to Chief Williams and ask him to implement it not just in our department, but to share it with other small police departments in the region. I know I can't undo what happened, but maybe I can help prevent it from happening to someone else." Lisa closed the folder and looked at Peterson. "This is good work. But I have to ask, are you doing this because you're genuinely committed to change, or because you're trying to save your career?" Peterson met her eyes directly. "Honestly, it started as an attempt to save my career. But the more I've learned about this stuff, the more I've realized that I needed to change, regardless of what happens to my job." "What do you mean?" "I mean that even if Chief Williams fires me tomorrow, I'm going to keep working on this. I've discovered that I had biases and attitudes that I never even recognized. And those attitudes didn't just hurt you, they've probably hurt a lot of people. Over the years." Peterson's voice was getting emotional. "Agent Rodriguez, I've been a police officer for 22 years. How many people did I treat unfairly during those years without even realizing it? How many times did I make assumptions about someone, based on their appearance or their background?" Lisa could see that his distress was genuine. "Peterson, the fact that you're asking those questions now is a good sign. A lot of people never get to that point. But it shouldn't have taken something like this to make me see it. I should have been better all along." They sat in silence for A few minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Lisa spoke up. "Peterson, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What would you say to a young police officer who's just starting their career? Someone who wants to avoid making the same mistakes you made?" Peterson thought carefully before answering. "I'd tell them that their uniform doesn't make them better than anyone else. I'd tell them that respect has to be earned, not demanded. And I'd tell them that every person they encounter, regardless of their race, their clothes, their car, or their attitude, deserves to be treated with dignity." Lisa nodded. "Those are good lessons." "I'd also tell them that admitting when you're wrong isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength and maturity." As they prepared to leave the cell, "Coffee shop?" Peterson turned to Lisa one more time. "Agent Rodriguez, I know you're probably going to file a formal complaint about what happened. And I want you to know that I won't fight it. Whatever consequences I face, I've earned them." Lisa had been thinking about that decision for weeks. Part of her wanted to file the complaint and push for the maximum penalties. But another part of her felt that Peterson was already learning from his mistake in ways that formal punishment might not achieve. "Peterson, I've decided not to file a formal complaint." Peterson looked shocked. "You haven't? Why not?" "Because I think you're doing something more valuable than any complaint could accomplish. You're actually changing, and you're trying to help others change too. That's worth more to me than seeing you get punished." Peterson's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve that kind of consideration from you." "Maybe not. But it's not about what you deserve. It's about what might actually make a difference." As Lisa drove back to the state capitol that afternoon, she thought about the conversation she had just had. She still felt angry about what had happened to her, and she knew that anger might never completely go away.